All right, it is 7 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see. Community comment. If anybody has any comments, questions, concerns that they want to address for items that are not on tonight's agenda, now would be the time to come forward and introduce yourself and voice those comments. Hearing none, we will move on. No presentations and reports, no public hearings. Brings us to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Great, we've got a motion by Councilmember Sayre,
Second.
a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business, 9.1, the franchise ordinance and fees. Smith?
Yep. Thank you. I'll go over the game plan quick. I'm going to do a really brief overview of some of the information that's previously been presented. I'm going to toss it over to Ron with the City Attorney's Office. He'll go over the memo that was included in your packet. And then I'm going to come back and read the comments, similarly to how Brent did at the previous meeting. So we have 7 submissions via the city's website, no Facebook, which should be helpful with the emojis that he had to act out. So at previous meetings, you'll recognize these slides. So at the January 21st, 2020 meeting, Brent, the city manager, gave a really extensive presentation about franchise fees. If you're new to the topic, watching at home, and this is your first time tuning in, I recommend going back 2 weeks and watching his presentation. It was really thorough. He went over a lot of information related to what franchise fees are, what we use them for, some detail about what the street projects are that we'd be looking to do, funding options, next steps, etc. So again, that meeting's available on the city's website, January 21st, 2020. So a really brief overview of what the franchise fees are, what we're discussing tonight. So a franchise fee essentially is a way for a city to collect money from utilities for using the city's right-of-way. Typically comes from electric, gas, and cable. So in Carver, those are companies like Xcel, MVEC, CenterPoint, Comcast, and Jaguar, so the people that send you the bill for their services. Utilities often see franchise fees as something that they can pass on to the user. So it typically shows up on your bill, so it commonly is referred to as a tax. Something that needs to happen no matter what we decide tonight moving forward with franchise fees is that we need a franchise agreement for cable television per state statute. So kind of 2 separate topics, but related. So no matter if we choose to move forward with franchise fees, we do need to adopt a franchise agreement just for cable television. So typically for gas and electric, they charge on a per user basis. So the example on the screen is $5 per month. So every time you get a bill, there'd be an additional charge for $5 per user or per meter. Cable television is a little bit different, where it's usually a percentage of the revenue that the company collects. And something just kind of anecdotal, of the 357 cities in Minnesota, franchise fees are collected by 357 cities in Minnesota, 101 of them being in the 7-county metro area. Our neighbors of Chaska, Chanhassen, and Victoria do collect franchise fees, and they're estimated to collect $7.6 million in franchise fees in 2020 alone. So what that looks like on your bill, this is a sample Xcel Energy bill, so it's pretty typical, has your service on there, but then you'll see that the outline includes franchise fees. So it'd be an extra line item that would be charged per month on your Xcel bill. The project that we've identified for funding potentially for franchise fees is our street maintenance program. So there are several projects that we know are coming up that we have a budget gap for, that we've identified that franchise fees potentially could help us fund that budget gap. So it's upcoming projects like 6th Street West, Carver Bluffs Parkway, Carver Creek Circle, etc. So these projects, there are a couple options that we're exploring to try to figure out funding for each one, but franchise fees could be an option moving forward. And a really great helpful visual is thinking about these in different buckets, so where the funding comes from. So franchise fees, there's two options on the screen that would represent franchise fees. It's the brown and the blue. It's just that they're at different percentages. So depending on the amount that the council is comfortable with, that would set the franchise fee. So yes, there are different options that we can explore for funding, franchise fees being one of those options that we could use. So the meeting tonight, again, we're not asking you to make a formal decision about whether we would like to start doing franchise fees. It's about setting public hearings. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron. He's going to talk you through the technical city attorney memo of when these public hearings would need to occur and when issuing would need to happen.
Mayor Johnson, members of the council, thank you. I will briefly just go over a highlight of the differences here. Oftentimes people discuss the public utility, and I want to distinguish that from a municipal utility. We're not obviously going into business as a utility. We're engaging with utilities that already exist. These are often gas or electric, and that's what we're talking about tonight. Also, that's distinguished from the cable communications franchise that we're also considering. And the reason why that's distinguished, and in summary that's about television, is that there are a lot more complex rules to adopting a franchise ordinance for the cable TV people. So on to initiating the process. What we have to do tonight, if we want to proceed, is to decide that there's going to be a public hearing date at some point in the future, and that's going to be incorporated into the next step, which is a notice. Now, technically, we can have this hearing in March, the way that the timing pans out, but these things take time to negotiate, and so the earliest that we would recommend having that public hearing is April 6th, and that allows that negotiation period to happen in between. Also, you would need to make a motion specifically to schedule that hearing for cable, electric, and gas franchise ordinances, and make a motion to authorize the publication of the notice that's required, and individual notices to the potential cable franchisees that we've identified. Now, what does that mean in terms of what's going to happen next? Well, what happens next is in February, staff would engage in franchise process steps and negotiation. March to April, there would be public hearings and fee decisions, which may track with the negotiation that's happening. And again, our recommendation is that the earliest hearing be on April 6th. And then April to May, the ordinance consideration and adoption, and there would be the usual 10-day notice prior to a final vote. Short and sweet, that's the summary of what will happen if you
All right.
decide it.
Now have you read?
Sure. So there have been, I think, 7 responses that we've received via the city's website since our last meeting, so I'll read through those. I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. The first is Jaron Steinbach at 708 Kirchy Hill Drive. Another concern I have about these fees is that once they are voted in as policy, what mechanism would there be to stop the city of Carver and the city council from raising these fees whenever and to whatever price they want? That is very concerning. Again, the city of Carver is trying to do too much too fast. Not all of us have wages that increase every year that can afford a $35,000 assessment fee, a $65 water bill, and an extra $15 added to monthly mortgage payment for the new city hall and these proposed franchise fees all in the same year. That is $280 per month extra in payments for the residents living on Kirchy Hill and Diedrich Drive starting in the same year. The city of Carver needs to slow down and spend within their means. Karen Ellingson, 615 Griffin Circle. Thank you for having the PowerPoint presentation available. I had a couple other questions. I was not able to view the mill and overlay video, which is in reference to the video that was in the previous PowerPoint. I like the idea of franchise fees versus increasing our already high property taxes. Speaking specifically about Mount Hope Road, we have lived here 19 years, and Mount Hope Road was gravel when we first moved here. I do not know what year it was paved. Honestly, it has not held up well at all. It has not even been 20 years. When bids go out for repair work or blacktopping, is quality of the work looked at in addition to bids for the work? This road is nasty. The manholes are either too high or too low on the road. The low ones are now developing craters, which I am sure are getting wrecked with ice and water. Second is a question in general I did not see any information online about. When builders are building new housing and excavating new roads, are they paying for road repairs to put the blacktop back? Again, is anyone examining the quality of work done? And is the city getting enough money from the builders destroying the pavement? Again, Mount Hope specifically, it is like a series of speed bumps due to poor job of repaving near the end of the street with new construction. If we can get any information about the quality issue, and also if the builders are paying anything and enough for road repair. Thank you. Michael Thompson, 1889 Green Ash Drive. Carver should join the fight and have the rule change at the state legislature in order to allow for the collection of street infrastructure fees from developers. Please see the example from Prior Lake, who has hired a lobbying firm. There's a link in there, which is live in the packet should you choose to visit. The expense would likely be passed down from the developer to the individual who builds a new home in the city, included within their purchase price. If the market won't bear a $1,000 to $2,000 price increase, the developer would have to take it from their profits or not build in the city. If funds must be collected in the meantime, due to an emergency situation, I am fine with franchise fees. If the effort to change legislative rules for charging developers is successful, remove the franchise fees. Thank you. Amy Watson, 1834 Sugar Maple Court. I feel franchise fees is a double dipping from residents. The gas, cable, internet companies will pass these fees onto the consumer. I feel there is not enough tax collected by area businesses. The most harm done to the streets are the commercial vehicles that trample them further building projects. We already pay city taxes, property taxes, and we don't get proper snow removal, but you want to double dip the citizens via franchise fees. This is very underhanded and dirty. Why are the gravel pit owners not paying an additional tax or fee if their 20 to 50 dump trucks tear up the roads? Why are commercial properties not paying more? I support a small fee from the residents, $3, but a larger fee to commercial and tax-exempt properties, $10, would make more sense. Commercial properties should bear more responsibility in this. A flat rate for all is ridiculous. The average use truck car will tear a road down over time, but commercial vehicles, semis, etc. damage them much faster. The commercial properties should want to help support the community that supports their businesses. The rate Carver is going, I'm looking to move. This is becoming ridiculous. Sherry Cochran, 685 Riesgraf. I do not support franchise fees. I oppose this. Thank you. Stephen Squires, 109 Carver Creek Circle. I could support fees for attached to these services, but wonder where it stops. I'm not in favor of attaching percentages to fees structure. It should be a flat fee that should have nothing to do with services consumed. I have to state that the city has lost my trust in being transparent, and while the city implies it be used for street improvements, I would suspect that when push comes to shove, the city will eventually use the fees collected as it sees fit based on for a priority it deems appropriate. I also worry about what other services the city may eventually pursue. Example, garbage, building permits, number of motor vehicles, golf carts, boats, recreational vehicle, dental, healthcare, daycare, student, wireless, postal address, resident, and other potential fees. It also seems inequitable to apply fee services that might be obtained by other means such as internet and cable using wireless carriers. Gas by having it delivered over the road versus pipes, electricity. Should someone who installs solar be charged a fee, especially if they might produce more than they use? I expect when it comes to some of these fees that they could be avoided by neighbors sharing subscriptions and services such as internet and YouTube TV. I've been and will continue to be very vocal that I believe taxes in Carver are too high. I moved to Carver over 20 years ago, expecting that eventually the taxes would eventually trend down and be more in line with older communities and suburbs. I love the community of Carver, but as you heard in the previous listening session, I believe the many residents of Carver are saying loud and clear that taxes are already too high. I'm very worried that when city funding for a river levy comes up, a breaking point may have been reached. Jessica Heimkes, 1246 Oak Tree Court. The city already puts assessments on homeowners for street maintenance. I'm pretty sure that 5 miles of the 21 miles that need to be maintained by the city just got brand new streets this summer and last summer due to all the streets that were redone. All this fell to the homeowners. It is ridiculous to compare Carver to Chaska and Chanhassen because they are much larger cities with more roads to maintain and a higher population. Carver is asking for $5 more per household than Chanhassen for a franchise fee. Fiscal responsibility is important. Where is all the money going that is already being collected? The city council needs to learn a lesson in fiscal responsibility. Stop spending our money. Carver is already taxed higher than surrounding communities. I am completely against any franchise fee, especially since the amount of large trucks going to and from the pit makes up a lot of the road wear, and this is only going to increase after it was approved to allow so many more loads per day to come out of the pit. Those are the responses we received since the last meeting.
I assume that when we get those emails that have some questions and some inaccuracies, they get a response back of answering their questions at least.
Yes,
Okay.
I suspect Brent is keeping a pretty close
Okay.
eye on them.
I assume he is too, but I just want to make sure because some of them had really clear questions with question marks, and I want to make sure that those are getting answered for our folks.
Absolutely.
So now I think is our time to, at a bare minimum, we need to set the public hearing for the franchise agreement for cable TV, which needs to go in regardless of how we feel on cable, or how, regardless of how we feel on franchise fees.
Yes.
The optional portion of this is what we want to do with franchise fees, so.
Could I ask a couple of questions
Yeah.
about the cable one, since
Sure.
that one is something
Sure.
that we have to move forward with?
Yep.
So we have to have a franchise agreement with them, correct? Is that what we have to approve tonight? Or I'm sorry, the public, but we want to move forward with, we have to by law have some type of agreement with the cable company.
So that would be the end product. What needs to be done tonight is to set a public hearing. It's an opportunity for the franchisee applicants to be heard, and it also allows for the statutorily required application period to occur. And if things were moving forward, then negotiation.
Okay. If everything moved forward, and maybe I'm reading this wrong about the cable, do we have to enter into some type of agreement with the cable company by statute?
I understand that that is required.
Okay. And when we enter into an agreement with them, do we have to have a dollar sign? Can it be zero? We can let them be here at zero, or we have to charge them something? It's a notable things.
So I understand that it could be zero if that's
Okay.
what you decide.
Okay. So we're not by statute required to, we have to charge back some amount. We just have to enter into a specific agreement with them.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That clears that
Yeah,
question.
sorry, I said, yeah, the first one I noticed.
Okay, I don't hear you correctly.
The franchise agreement
Mhm.
is just the agreement that we're required to
Mhm.
do. Where's everybody sitting on franchise fees?
I don't like them. The only thing I like about them is it's a use tax and everybody is billed the same. Other than that, it's still a tax. And it's been a rough 2 years here with City Hall and a lot of the things that have come down the pike. I'm not very comfortable just saying, oh, here we go, we're gonna hit you again.
Okay, so taking a half a step back and realizing that I think the problem that we're trying to solve here for is for street maintenance.
I understand.
Right? Yep, I know. And so I think open to moving forward with franchise fees or not, but I think we need to keep in mind how are we gonna solve for this road
Streets.
maintenance. So,
Understand.
I have a couple comments on
Yeah.
that, if we could, let us
Go ahead.
finish. Okay, so when I was looking through our options here, and obviously taking into consideration everything that's in the packet, and then everything that we are hearing, whether it's pro or con against it from residents. So when I'm looking at, we have some mutual state aid that may be coming into effect here very soon. Once we hit 5,000 people, we could be getting between $250,000 to $275,000 per year. Roads that, now it's not stamped that these roads are, but it's a very good possibility that roads that could fall under that are gonna be 6th Street and Mount Hope Road. So when we're looking to the future here, saying we have an $847,000 shortfall, if we were to now be able to use this municipal state aid funding for 6th Street West and Mount Hope Road, we basically cut that number in half. So when we start looking at charging franchise fees for this as our set number, or how we would have to tax for it at some point, whether if we went that route, we're using a number that may not be what it ends up being if we are able to get this aid. So I feel uncomfortable saying, yep, 5, 5, 5 for this and that, when we actually may be looking at half of the shortfall that we are projecting at this point. And I appreciate that years have been attached to this, but we are not married to any of these years. I realize that maybe some of these were put higher up because they may be in a little bit worse repair. But if we are looking at being able to put $390,000, $250,000 to $275,000 from municipal state aid towards 6th Street, I am more than happy to push it back a couple of years, if that's possible, and have that be the first one on the list when that comes. I do think we have been throwing tax after tax after tax. Some things are needed. We are a growing community. I understand that. We are sitting in one of those right now. But when I start to think about people, we have to realize that not everyone has the same income earning power. There are people on fixed incomes. There are people who work a job that doesn't make as much, and certain dollar amounts can affect them more than we realize. And also when I'm looking at, I think it was bucket number, oh gosh, here we go. Bucket number, color, purple, the purple bucket. It says if we had to tax, the tax impact would result in an additional $91 per year, and this is under the fully funding street maintenance as described in the street maintenance program through property taxes. $91 per year through property taxes is less than what we would be collecting for franchise fees. So I'm not sure how those numbers are correlating if we only need $91 per year.
Can I answer that?
You sure can.
So that's on a $300,000 house. We have houses that are worth more than that. We have houses that are worth less than that. That's the average number. So
Sure.
you and I will be
Perfect.
paying different amounts.
Yep. But even if that number goes up to 125, it is still less than the 200 to 250, whatever that number turned out to be. Maybe it was around 200, I believe, if we went with full franchise fees as they have been, I don't want to say proposed, but considered at that point. So there's a disparity in numbers there that I'm not very comfortable with. I do understand, thank you, that yes,
Okay.
I mean, housing.
Sorry, I wasn't-
That's okay. No, I appreciate that. Some are going to be maybe, less, and some are going to be more. When I look at it too with essential services, when you're looking at water, when you're looking at gas, those are essential services. This isn't a luxury at this point, so now we are taxing something that is essential to people. You can choose the price of your home. You can choose your cable company or not to have a cable company. But here we're saying if you want to live through a Minnesota winter, you're going to have this tax. This pass-through franchise fee. But so for me, putting this number on things that are essential is also a really hard swallow for me. The cable company, so this one does not include anything but actual Xfinity, is that right? It would just be the Xfinity?
Wire, if they.
If you have Dish Network,
No Dish, no DirecTV.
okay. So then to me, there's a disproportionate number of people who would be paying the street maintenance fund out of their cable because they've chosen cable over Dish Network. The people who have the dishes aren't going to be paying anything, is my understanding. So then the people who have cable, and I can say for myself, my old house that in the historic area that was along the tree line, I could not get Dish there. I did not have a choice. I had to have cable. Is cable essential? It is not. But I didn't have a choice, and so I think if now looking at it, if I saw this franchise fee coming in, I'll reassess, what I'm looking at and see if I can get it cheaper. So I don't want people who, because they have one service, are now paying for things that people who have another service are not. That's all for now.
Thoughts, ladies?
My only comment is that I think the street maintenance is important to fund. I know there's been a lot of confusion, it shows up in the comments from residents about what street and maintenance we're talking about. We're not talking about Jonathan Carver Parkway, which is largely what is being used by the gravel trucks. This is streets in front of my house in Carver Bluffs. I'm driving on it. I'm the one who's wrecking the roads. I feel like I should pay for it. And so I really think it's important that we maintain these and we figure out a way to pay for it. I know when we all met and talked about budgeting and how we get funding sources for the community, when nearly all of it comes from property taxes, and we wanted to diversify it, and this was an option we chose to pursue. I think it was worth pursuing. I think this was really helpful to understand what it could look like for our community. Having gone through it and hearing the feedback from the community, I feel like my sense is that the community would rather have us raise property taxes to cover important funding projects like this, or balance or take away other funding projects than just apply a franchise fee.
Can I ask
That's my feeling.
Oh, I just wanted to ask a question piggybacking off the budget comment, and Larry Harris just left the room. So
You still have a lawyer.
Okay, yeah.
Not wrong.
Okay, so we have our special capital fund where if we do have any excess funds, we put them into that fund. Is that something that we can use for the street maintenance as well? Don't know. Call Brent. No.
Unfortunately, I would have to get back.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because when we have our own checkbooks at home, right, there's wants and needs, right? So I have things that I certainly want, but I mostly have things that I need. So when we're looking at some of these projects, right before we get hopefully some of that municipal state aid funding, is it something that we can budget half for, put it in that fund, budget the next half the next year? And then we can basically, like a savings account, because we know this project is coming. So I want to know what that could look like. Lori, you look confused by my question.
It just seems like a real stretch to have all that work out, but I like the direction you're going.
Right, well, it'd be, I mean, you tax at a certain rate, and what you're saying, we need, okay, so we need $100,000. So this year we're gonna tax for 50,000 of it, next year we're gonna collect the next 50,000 of it, and then now we can do the project. Not saying that's the right way to go, just asking if that's even something that's possible.
Councilmember Mock, yes.
Oh, well, thank you.
Lori?
No, I guess I would like to move forward just because the part of getting the public, I guess we've gotten a lot of input already from the public. I still would want to have room to maybe go $3, maybe $5, maybe $8. I still want to be open or just get input on that. But I do support where we're at as far as the idea of a franchise fee for all three services.
Got a question.
Yeah.
If we were to pass franchise fees and we funded all of our road maintenance, all of our projects that we have for the next, let's just call it 5 years, how tough is it to rescind the franchise fees?
Well, that depends on the
How
specific
tough
letter.
is it to be, to rescind them?
So that's something that can be addressed in the language of the ordinances in terms of, the timeline of how long a specific term is going to be. So that can be addressed as your needs, as you lay out your needs. So if you wanted to put something into effect that gave you a certain timeline, we could look at doing that. We should know that in advance as much as possible. So if that's something you want us to look at a little bit harder, we can look at that timeline to give you maximum flexibility.
In your experience, have you ever had a city that has passed and implemented franchise fees? Has anybody ever rescinded them, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. That's something that I can look into a little bit harder, again, both in terms of flexibility and in terms of, what it looks like when you seek to end these kinds of agreements. so I can get back to you on both of those questions.
When I'm looking at this, and I know I just talked about the tax rate, and then if we were to get some of this funding, because if you look at the one that has city property taxes with the yellow and the orange, I don't know if we can back up or forward to that slide. It is
Forward.
32. Okay. So this one shows what the 2020 proposed tax capacity rate would be had we, if we were to go ahead with funding it right now, and it puts us at 52.45%, which is a raise from the 49.31%. But again, if we look to funding for this for the next fiscal year, and then we can hopefully, I would like to think, we're gonna be right at that 5,000 mark, if not this year, then next year. Then this number too, because we will be bringing it down, because if we can get some of that state aid funding, we're looking at cutting that number in half. This chart here will even be lessened by that if we get the municipal state aid funding, because we won't be required to tax as high for that remaining dollar amount. I think it's pretty obvious. I don't think franchise fees are the way for us to go. I think it is a sneaky way of getting a tax, and I do think that what we have heard from residents is that they would prefer to be taxed for it, reiterating what Joy had said. And I think that I would prefer to look at street maintenance from that way rather than through franchise fees.
I agree with you, and as some residents have pointed out, I will give to you that this is a tax by any other name is a tax. In this example, we're calling them franchise fees. So I get that. Again, what I am solving for and what I am continually coming back to is street maintenance. I'm sure we all get the calls and emails and texts and Facebook messages of, have you seen the pothole here? I lost my front end, and we're weeks away from starting to get those, and then that'll go all throughout the summer. We need something in place so that our roads are lasting longer. I don't think, so one of the emails that Aaron read tonight referenced the 2019 street improvement project. I'm not sure that residents realize that while you got assessed for that project, we're all paying for that in some form or another, because just 20% of that is affected to the folks who have properties, who about that. So I am not necessarily opposed to franchise fees. I liked the idea of the more reasonable franchise fee, but I think if we, I do like the way that you're going with the property taxes, and if we take it 1 year at a time and wait until we get the state aid. The only thing that I'm concerned about is the state aid might cover Mount Hope, it might cover 6th Street, but we're also talking the Bluffs and Kerchie and, at some point Red Oak Drive, so I just want to stress that we're going to have this conversation probably as early as when do we start budgeting? July? Yep. And it's going to be a bump up. The franchise fees is a very equal way of assessing this fee. Taxes is a very equitable way of paying for our roads. And I would like to, I do like the more equitable solution, and I like, you do have a point of taxing the folks. What I keep saying is, there was an event last week at Carver Ridge, and I keep thinking of all the folks who are moving into the assisted living units there and learning that there's now a $5 fee on there. And I don't know how things are paid there, if they're paying their utilities, but now thinking that there's now a $5 fee on this, a $5 fee on that, and 5% on their cable. So I definitely keep going back to that, and the franchise fees is not something that I am completely comfortable with. I just want to make sure before we completely put this to bed that we are all comfortable with raising taxes to pay for our roads.
I am, and I think looking at when we go into our next budgeting session too, we really need to look hard at needs and wants.
Yep.
As we always do.
Right, but I mean, I'm not
Certainly.
saying that we don't, but what I'm trying to get at is that we are still a town of 5,000, right? So when we look at
Not
towns
quite.
surrounding us that have I'll call them bells and whistles, when they have all the bells and whistles, and we start to have people who move in, and I'm not saying just them, but everyone, but we often hear some growing pains of saying, well, when are you going to get this, and why don't we have this? I am absolutely comfortable with saying, we're a town of 5,000, we will at some point. Right now, we can't afford it, and that's okay with me. So if we have to raise a little bit on taxes when it comes to street maintenance, I'm okay with that. I'm also okay saying we're not going to have that bell and that whistle this year because we just can't afford it.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page essentially. Again, though, I just want to make sure that we are solving for this, whether
Yes.
you call it a franchise fee or whether you call it a straight tax. And I agree with everything that you said in sharpening the pencil, which again, we really
Sure,
do.
absolutely.
But yeah, with that, is there any other?
I want to say, I appreciate going through this process and considering this. This was something that we set out strategically to look at, right, as a potential option, because we knew about all the things we've got to fund. And so I appreciate us going through this exercise to really understand, what does it look like? How many dollars are we talking about? What does it mean for individual residents? And hearing all of this feedback, that was very helpful. So I feel
Yeah.
better
Yep.
understanding
Yep.
how our residents feel, what they feel like their priorities, Friendship City priorities should be, so that we can make better decisions.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. I know it was a lot of work, but.
Yeah, but now
I
we have
wanted
the
to
best
dismiss it.
understanding of
I
it.
agree too, like we're making a very informed
Yes.
decision.
Yes.
Mayor Johnson, before you wrap up the conversation, there is an opportunity to accept public comment tonight.
Okay.
Oh. So, with that, you've heard enough from us. Do you have anything to say, Reed? You always have something to say. Come on up, introduce yourself and let us know what you think.
My name is Reed Welch. I live at 1813 Red Oak Ridge. I guess I'd just generally like to thank the councils. I know you've had a lot of negative comments, and the few people I've talked to have in my neighborhood and another person who lives in Carver that I work with, no one likes their taxes raised, but I think you are being very responsible in identifying a shortfall and trying to fix it in as least impactful for the residents as possible. So, I mean, I'd just like to comment, I know you've got a lot of negative comments. Again, not even me, I don't like my taxes increase, but I think you guys are doing a great job. I just had to follow up on some of the county roads are like Jonathan Carver and I think 40 right Main Street, that's handled purely through the county, or does the city pay for a portion of that road maintenance? Just curious.
What I do know, while I'm
Okay.
trying to make eye contact with somebody who does it, for projects like the Jonathan Carver
Right.
Parkway project that we're looking at, which will be a major expense
Oh,
to the
sure.
city and a major improvement to that corridor, there will be a cost share. I believe it's 80-20
Okay.
for the city.
The
to
city,
20%.
yes, okay.
Yeah.
But the general, like, fixing
right.
potholes and
Close.
that, okay.
Close.
It's according to their cost share policy, that's an estimated range. Once
Sure.
all the elements get calculated, then it'll split out, but that's,
There's always that asterisk.
Yeah.
it's not, yeah.
There's this just
For
The engineering
Close.
For
disclaimer, I was
ongoing
gonna say.
maintenance, though, of Jonathan Carver Parkway, are we paying for that, or is
No
the county
maintenance,
taking
right.
care of that?
Maintenance, I was looking to Brian.
Oh.
Yeah, Brian.
I don't
Sorry.
I
Yes,
do not
you would-
believe.
Come on, Brian.
Better be it.
Get more people involved.
Everybody gets to talk.
The maintenance on County Road 40, Main Street, Broadway here, JCP is all maintained by the county,
Okay.
so we don't have any involvement. We do help out in certain areas and when they can't get out here, but for the most part, it's all
Okay.
maintained by them, so.
Sure. And then a question for the city attorney here. Is there any way that the, either the franchise fee or a specific property tax can be dedicated to a specific use? I think another one of the concerns of residents is like drift, right? And say, hey, we're using it for roads, and then end up getting,
Shoot, we have a.
a brand new, I don't
for
know,
that.
amusement center or something, right? And curling, right? So I
Perfect,
think.
good one to pick, right?
Again, something like that where where the tax is specific for road maintenance or the fee is dedicated, right? So then again, being transparent, right? You can have, here's our current road estimate from the city planner and the managers of, the roads we're going to need to repair in the next 5 years. Here's our dedicated funding, look at the, based on the current, again, making up numbers here, 3% property tax of, I know that's a bad number, I don't know, whatever, it's like 0.5, sorry, covers this much. If we did it to 0.7, just maybe some more transparency in that. I don't know if that's legal or possible. I think that would help, assuage residents' fears of, like I said, kind of drift away from roads, which everyone uses to understand, into other, more bells and whistles type things.
And so, Mayor Johnson, the council, is that something that you want me to get back to? Or
Sorry.
Well, yeah, let's so we can read an answer on that.
Okay. Yeah, and then again, I'm willing to help out my fellow neighbors. I mean, our street's relatively new, but again, in 5-10 years, I'm sure it'll need to be done. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yep.
Do you folks have any comments, questions?
Well, I got a lot of them.
Come on up, Dwight.
Come on.
Come on.
You don't know what can of worms you're opening by inviting Dwight up here.
This is your opportunity.
Here we go. Yes. I'm sorry I can't see very well. Okay.
If you could give us your name and address before you start, please.
It's Dwight Schultz, 1520 Main Street West. Before it was brought up about truck traffic. And that was my whole livelihood, okay? I owned them. Do any of you here know what a truck pays in taxes per year?
I would love for you to tell us. Do you know?
I bet it's a lot.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah. No, but
Do you have a
Yeah.
clue?
I don't drive a truck. Can you give me?
Because
an
you
idea?
have to answer a lot of questions for folks that call in.
Yeah.
First of all, a license plate on a medium-sized dump truck is $3,000 a year. They have wheelage tax, they have fuel tax, they have, when you buy one, you pay the sales tax and the other federal excise tax, which is 13% of the cost of that truck. These things are paying their way, and people need to know that. They're also hauling product to all of us every day, which we request, yet we want to spit on them. And I think that's wrong. And another thing that I think we're trying to budget things for streets and city halls, everything. If we got to try and think of running our city like a business. We can't spend it if we don't have it or have a place where it's coming from. And another question I have is, how long is the county going to take care of 40?
Brian,
It's my understanding that
Yeah.
once we get to 5,000,
Yep.
Right,
then it gets
and we're
turned
very
back over.
close to that.
Yep.
So we're going to start eating that too.
Yep, that's true.
And our equipment is downhill. For the miles of the roads we have, we're pretty short on equipment really, and help. So there's a lot of things that you know already
Yep.
that we have to look at
Yep.
and be cautious with.
Mr. Schultz, I appreciate the education on the dump trucks. That was something that I did not know. And it was kind of what I was getting at when I asked Aaron if we follow up with the constituents who send in some of those questions, because we're talking about Carver Bluffs Parkway, we're talking about Kirchie and High Street, we're talking about Sunny Ridge. We don't see, Ricegraph, we don't see dump trucks on those streets, so it's
No.
that's not the cause. This is just the normal wear and tear.
And also, the traffic from a truck in our situation with the gravel is seasonal.
Yep.
Almost 5 months of the year, they aren't out there. They aren't causing that, and your cars are.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
battle on.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Right.
your comments, thank you.
And now the better half.
I just have one comment. and
Please,
only one.
please.
Please,
Pardon me?
please, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if people here realize it. The county does. Every ton of gravel that comes out of that gravel pit, it used to be 15 cents a ton, and I think, I've heard it's gone up. Now, that truck is gonna take 18 to 20 tons. Every ton, 15% of that, 15 cents, goes straight into the county, for road maintenance. So, I mean, you look at it, you think there should be money for road maintenance, I don't know. And of course, that is county, it's not city.
Right, yeah.
But the trucks and mulers, they're paying taxes, they're paying good taxes. And then, you hear a lot of complaints about the truck traffic or mulers, or why aren't we charging mulers more? That's not the answer. That's not part of the problem at all, I don't think. But anyhow, that was my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you for the education tonight, really.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so,
Where's our motion?
there isn't one,
Is
so.
there a motion?
Mr. Blum,
We
what do
need
you
to look
need?
at-
Can you remind us what you need from us?
Yes, please.
Sure. So
Like to a
if
section.
we are going to initiate at the very least the cable
Yep.
franchise process, then we need to finalize what that date is going to be. And then the motion is to schedule the public hearings for at least cable on that date. And then a motion to authorize publication of the notice to potential franchisees, and then individual notices to all of the cable franchise likely franchisees that we know. So there's a total of 3 notices that would have to happen. I do have a draft notice available that I can make available to staff. The dates for the publication would have to be on February 13th, 2020, and February 20th, 2020. It's twice over the course of 2 weeks' notice, in addition to the individual notices to the potential franchisees.
Okay, so I heard you need 3 things from us. We need to schedule a public hearing for the franchise agreement for cable, which, to be clear for everybody who's listening, this is something that's required by state law. We have decided to not go down the franchise fee route, but this agreement still needs to be in place, even though there's no money exchanging hands. So that's number 1, a notice to the franchisees, and then the individual notices. Am I correct that those are the 3 things you're looking from us tonight?
2 publications on the 2 dates, and 1 set of individual notices to the potential franchisees. So
Okay.
the 2 publications.
What were the publication dates again? February
13th
February
and
13th and 20th.
and 20th.
Okay, who's gonna tackle that motion? I will make a motion
Thank you.
to check all of the boxes that Mr. Blum just indicated we need to do to move forward. So that includes schedule a public hearing for April 6th. April 6th. Publish 2 separate notices that go to the franchisees for cable, and to also notice the individual franchisees.
I will, is that it? Is that all of it? Is there more?
Is that good?
I'm good?
Okay.
We're good.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mayor Johnson and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion?
No.
So I just want to thank staff for all the work. This was a lift.
Yeah.
I want to thank all the folks who participated in the process. We appreciate the feedback. And thank you guys. This was a really good conversation to have and kind of determine not only what we're going to do tonight on February 3rd, but also kind of what we're going to do later on this summer in our budget cycle. So any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Let's see. Moving on to communications.
I don't have anything.
Right.
Nope, I got nothing.
Okay.
The monthly parks meeting is next Monday at 6:30. That's all that I have for communication.
All right. Let's see. Had a couple of Southwest Transit Board meetings, one on the 23rd, and then there was a Transit Advisory Committee meeting on the 28th. Again, Carver Ridge had the sneak peek on the 29th, which was cool to go in there, and I know a lot of staff went down there as well. It was cool to see it with the furniture in there, and they had, because I tried just about every door, all of the units were open, so you could go in and like check out the units. And
Oh, wow.
I think they had a few model units, but you could see like every unit's kind of different and unique, and it's just such a great thing to have in our community. So they did have their first residents move in on the weekend on Saturday. So
Awesome.
we now have new residents living in Carver Ridge. And then I also maybe just wanted to take just a quick second to address East Union Elementary. So the school board has talked about, with a referendum not passing, last fall, the school district is in a situation that they would not like to be in, I'm sure, where they have to cut $10 million from the budget. And one of those items is that they have slated East Union Elementary to close not the next school year, but in 2 years. So that would be the 21-22 school year.
Yep.
I've received emails and phone calls from a couple of residents asking us to get involved. I just want to be really clear and kind of share my philosophy that I am going to stay in my lane. The school district has their own work to do in filling this funding gap and figuring out where they're going to make their cuts. I am working for the folks who reach out to me, I'm working really hard to make sure that they're connected with the right folks
Exactly.
at the school district level. So I've connected them directly with Clint Christopher, the superintendent. I've also reached out to Jenny Stone, who has been amazing. I think she's great because she's a Carver resident and has that unique Carver perspective. Her kids also went to East Union, so she.
What's her
also-
role again? With
She's on the school board.
the school board, okay.
Yes, she's a school board member.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good.
So she has been terrific. So I just want to be really clear that I am kind of staying hands-off, because just if Tim Klein, for example, who's a school board member, would tell us what he thought we should do with franchise fees, and he doesn't live in Carver, I would probably tell him to stay in his lane.
Right.
So that's how I'm choosing to proceed with that, just sharing that with the broader group and whoever's watching at home. Again, it is not a situation that I take lightly, and I want to make sure that folks aren't, quite frankly, wasting their time with me because I don't have any pull with the school district. So just making sure they're connected to the right folks. That is all I have.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I agree with you. Not because I think East Union, that my personal view is that I want East Union to stay open and exactly where it is, but we have no jurisdiction over this area. So I think as a personal level, I have my own battle to fight, and you may or may not, but I don't think as a council whole that is probably a role. I think you're very correct in heading down that direction for us or with us. So. We had the Soggy Bottom a couple weekends ago. It was amazing. I'm going to try not to cry because all I do is cry when I talk about this. We had such a great turnout. The weather was fantastic. We had probably 300 people down there, which is double our normal attendance. Wow. We quadrupled our fundraising efforts. And yeah, so we are writing, here it comes. So we're writing big checks to these folks. And it was really successful. It was great. There was an article in the Chaska Herald, if you haven't got a chance to see it. The Osterdyke family, who Greg was a original founder of the event and became a recipient of the event at year 9, obviously now has passed on. His wife and daughter and family members came with their friends, of a group of like 24 people or something like that, they came out and golfed, and there's a great picture of them in the Chaska Herald. But it was very fun. Looking forward to next year, we have no hats left. We ran out of everything. I didn't even get one. I mean, but yeah. So anyways, it was a great event. I appreciate everyone who came out, helped, donated time, everything that went along with that. So I'm not sure if we have an HPC meeting next week. We do not. Okay. We'll talk about that. I thought we were going to have one, so even for discussion-wise. But okay, thank you.
Tell them how much each recipient got.
With with a couple of large donors, and then one trust fund who pledged an amount that we're working on right now for another large amount. We raised $20,000.
That's impressive.
It was awesome. I'm just for everybody else who helped. So.
It was awesome. It
Thank
was
you.
fun. You put on a great event.
Thank
It was a lot of work, but it was fun.
Yeah.
We have no planning commission meeting this month. I'm at a loss. I would like to say one thing about how we communicate with people that say, why are our taxes high in Carver? I am not afraid to tell anybody, well, what about the franchise fees you're running through in your communities now? Ask them the question. They'll give you the deer in the headlights look. So open their eyes to just how it works, and you'll be amazed. They're like, oh, okay, well, I'll have to start looking at that, and then they'll start coming around to how we can just better communicate who we are. Other than that, I got nothing.
All right. Aaron? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry, a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good evening.